I'm real glad to have you back. Listen to another episode. I'm Brent.
I'm Scott.
This is the Strange Embers Podcast. So we're back on our 50 state haunt series that we've been doing. We're going to be taking a trip to Alaska in this one.
Yeah, and I found some pretty interesting things in Alaska, a lot of which I wouldn't much so call them like haunted places, but just weird coincidences that happen in these areas that lead people to believe that they may be haunted or be possessed by some supernatural force, something along those lines.
It was kind of the same way for me. I do have one ghost kind of place that I did find, but overall it was very interesting just going into some of the history and some of the stuff that I did find in there. Just like you said, some of the cryptids, a lot of the cryptids from Alaska, and the missing people, missing things. A lot of missing goes on in Alaska.
Yeah, I did notice that. I have one in particular, if we can get to it. I wouldn't say it went missing. This in particular thing went missing, but how it happened should not have happened.
Those always make good stories.
Yeah, they do. They do. There's a lot of history behind that one that if we have time to get to it, I would like to. But my first one's more of like a freak accident. Wrong place, wrong time type deal.
Right.
So if you want me to get into it, we'll do the wheel spin first. Like we do on all the episodes, see what state we got next.
I'm going to spin it.
And we have Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Not a state, but we did include it because it is.
A lot of people question, why don't you do Washington, D.C.?
Right. So we went ahead and added it in here.
So it's the 51 state, or the 50 and a half state haunt.
And a half. Yeah, there's DC's been around long enough. There's some pretty interesting places up there. I'm more than sure that we're gonna find. We could really get into a lot of conspiracy stuff with DC as well.
No doubt.
Well, this time we're in Alaska. Just to say a little bit about Alaska, if most people don't know, it was the 49th state in the United States. It is twice the size of Texas. So there's a lot of wilderness in Alaska. I didn't know this until the other day that apparently there are a lot of people that when you were in school and they showed the maps in school, you would have the continental 48, and then it'd have the little picture of Hawaii down there at the bottom, and it'd have a little picture of Alaska up there at the top, right? I didn't know this till the other day, but do you know how many people don't know the size of Alaska because they always correlated it with those maps, seeing it in school, of it just being this little
bitty secluded area by itself.
Correct. Yep. Being on that map like that. I had no idea that so many people have no idea of the
vastness.
Yes, the amount of land.
Yeah, Alaska's huge.
So Alaska has 17 of the highest peaks of the United States also.
Mountain ranges.
Correct.
Nice. I didn't know that.
I did not either. And there was estimated of over 100,000 glaciers there as well.
Wow.
And the next one, the one other little fun fact, I guess you could say, that kind of figured, but 16,000 people have vanished without a trace in Alaska. Over 16,000 people.
Really?
that makes me want to question also all the serial killers. So many of them come out of Alaska. How many contribute to that?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's actually pretty cool knowledge there. Obviously I knew the size of Alaska, but the other thing, the 17 Peaks, had no clue that was in Alaska. Honestly, I would have probably put it towards the Appalachian Trail being, how vast it is, but
Well, I guess I didn't fully say it either. 17 of the 20 highest peaks.
okay, I got you.
Out of the 20, yeah.
Got you. All right. Well, do you want me to start it off, Brent?
Jump in.
All right. So my first one's going to be, oh my goodness, I don't want to butcher this. So just a fair warning to you. Alaska has a lot of words that are spelled one way, but pronounced a whole nother way. And I did not look up the pronunciation of any of these. So if I butcher it,
you're just going to wing this.
I'm just winging this one.
I hear you.
This is Badarka Road.
I'll go with it.
Badarka in Chujiak, Alaska. The road is known to be haunted by a man and his daughter who both happened to die a very tragic death. People have said that their ghost, if you're driving down this road, this trail is really what it is. If you're driving down this trail at a specific time, you'll see the dad and the daughter, the dad holding the daughter soaked in blood. You can hear their cries. Wow. Yeah, you can hear their cries from the road. But the main thing is you have to go super deep into the woods, and it has to be exactly 3:30 a.m. That's the
witching hour?
Right. That's like the key time that you witness any activity on this road.
So what was she covered in blood for? Did you you find out anything about, is there any kind of actual lore?
Okay. There is a story. And it is lore based. It's actually a very known Alaskan lore and popular ghost story. But before we get to that, just to give a little bit of a location, because if you look it up on the map, you type in Badarka Road or however you pronounce it on the GPS, it's not going to pull it up. South Birchwood in Alaska, there's a trail that heads out of it. It's not marked on the map, but there's one trail. If you're in South Birchwood, you'll see the trail. It said you can't miss it. You go through that trail, and that's where this accident happened. It's a gravel road, as most places in Alaska that are out in the wilderness are. It's either going to be gravel, dirt, or snow. You got to drive deep in the backwoods, just like I said before, 3:30 in the morning. And you better be expecting a good scare, because there's tons of accounts of people riding snowmobiles, having scares, out late, just riding. The story goes, there was a man and his 5-year-old daughter who went into the woods to get firewood for their cabin. The man been chopping down trees all day. The daughter was helping him pick up stuff, pick up logs, move limbs. So during one of their midday breaks, the dad, instead of sitting the axe down, because it's a sharp axe, instead of sitting it down on a log or on the floor, he didn't want his daughter to be able to step on it or sit on it, get hurt. So he stuck it into a tree about chest high. So he walked off, sat down on a log, and took a little break. And as he was sitting there, his daughter thought that she was going to be a big helper. So she stood up on a log, reached for the axe, struggled to get it out, but once she finally got it out, fell down, hit her in the head, and killed her. The dad found her and held her dead corpse for 3 days, crying and moaning over her death until he eventually died of hypothermia.
In the lore, was there a year this supposed to have happened in?
Didn't find anything in that. That's all I found on it. but I thought it was pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, it's very, very unfortunate.
And
But-
multiple witnesses to the encounters.
Multiple. They'll go out. Some people have said like some of the witnesses would go out at midnight, not see anything, and as they're coming back at 3, not see anything, and another group would go out at 3:15 and get to the spot at 3:30 and see stuff.
On these particular ones like this, I wonder how many of these actually are. Is this a single witness? One person was on the snowmobile and saw it. Is there accounts of multiple people being there?
Well, this one in particular that I read was like 3 different groups. That one went in at one time, came out one time, one went in, came out, vice versa.
Right.
In
But
the
it
middle,
wasn't just an individual.
No,
it was groups of
it
people.
was groups of people. But that's all I got on my first one. Just a little quick icebreaker story.
I do like that one. I'm going to talk a little bit about a little thing called the Alaskan Triangle. Have you heard about this yet?
It's almost similar to the Bermuda, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what people call it. It's the Bermuda Triangle in Alaska, but it's the Alaskan Triangle. It is a area in Alaska that the same thing is just like the Bermuda Triangle, is there's a lot of strange disappearances that happen, strange phenomenon that happens in this area.
It's where those 16,000 went.
That would be crazy if it was like all
Right.
16,000 were there, right? So, well, we can account on one particular time of 44 of them happened there. In 1950, there was a military aircraft. It was a C-54 Skymaster.
Mm.
It was flying into the Alaskan Triangle. It left Anchorage at 1 p.m. on January the 26th of 1950. It made its radio checks. It checked in just like it normally would during a flight. So a couple hours into its flight, it flew over a small town in Yukon. That's where it made its last communication over the radio, and then radio silence from that plane. 8 crew members, 36 passengers on this plane, none of them ever heard from again. The military put out a search effort with the United States and Canadian planes. Both were flying over, doing searches. Nothing. They had volunteers out on foot. Nothing's ever been found of them. Just kind of like same thing, like you said with Bermuda. They go missing and that's it. There was no other trace of them.
But see, the difference in the Bermuda versus the Alaska, from what I'm gathering here, is the Bermuda is obviously over water. So if something does go missing and it goes into the water, the current is so strong. I mean, there's no telling where that goes. But in Alaska,
not only just the current, there's so much of after a certain depth that we know nothing about.
Right. And at a certain depth, things start to implode. It disappears. Literally will disintegrate under pressure.
Right.
But the Alaska Triangle, I mean, that's over. Obviously, there's a lot of lakes and a lot of waterfront in Alaska. But from my knowledge of the Alaskan Triangle, for the most part, it's a lot of mountainous area. So do they know, like, did it specify if this was in like the wintertime or summertime? Because I would think if it was in the wintertime, it might have been a little bit easier to track down something versus if it was in the summertime.
You would think so. I mean, even if that is the case, I'm looking at it like this: it's a military plane. You have an 8-man crew on a military plane. One of the things about the military is survival also.
Yeah.
So even if you had a plane go down, my guess is the 36 passengers on there probably wasn't civilian also, but we're going to step out on a limb and say they were civilian. You still have an 8-man crew that are military trained to survive. Yes, given you're in the wilderness, I don't care if it's winter, summer, or whatever, you're deep in Alaska, your planes went down, you're there, but they know to be listening for other aircraft.
Right.
Have something, send some smoke signals up, something to make themselves known.
Yeah, and even even if they were civilians, and let's just say they were locals, if you live in Alaska or you've been to Alaska, you know that your first thing that you're taught is how to survive. I mean, that's
Or at least try your best to do it.
right. You learn your basic survival tactics. You know how to build a shelter, how to make a fire, how to send signals, like you said, smoke signals. I mean, all that does play into effect. So I mean, that's kind of strange.
It's very, very strange.
I like that.
There are multiple aircraft stories of, going missing in the Triangle area. There's lots of those. There are also a lot of.
I also, not to cut you off, the C series airplanes are not small.
No, they're big.
The transport airplanes, they are large. It's not like a brush plane or something. It's hard to miss. Like, you're not going to miss that. If it's on the ground somewhere, there's no way that you can miss that, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, even with that being said, you're talking about 44 people on there. So just to kind of paint a picture in your mind while we're talking about this, most people know what a bus looks like. The C-Series planes are bigger, the fuselage of that's bigger than that.
Yep.
But just think about a bus, just a school bus. You put 44 people in a school bus, that's 2 people to each seat going down through there, and you're going to fill the bus up. There's no room for anything else. So when you're talking about a plane, just to kind of to paint that picture in your mind of how big it'll be, bare minimum would be a flying bus. So, I mean, that is, you see what I'm saying?
We got the magic school bus out here.
That's correct. That is correct. That could be the reason that the triangle exists. There are tons of aircraft stories that come out of the triangle of missing aircraft and all, but there's also a lot of UFO stories that come out from there as well. And on this series, on our haunt series, I don't want to get really too
involved.
Well, that's one. Yes, I'm trying to keep them more simple and let people do a little bit more of their own. Give somebody a base for them to go do their own investigations, because I've really been enjoying looking some of this stuff up that I probably wouldn't have looked up if we wasn't doing this. So that's kind of my point of this too, is I'm hoping this will strike throw a spark into somebody to make them go do some research also. But the conspiracy theory part of things, there's some stuff. I'm just gonna throw this one out there. Have you ever heard of the Black Pyramid?
No, I have not.
That's another fun one to go look up. That is in the Alaskan Triangle as well. What's the
gist of it? Just the short and simple.
There's the short and simple is, do you know what the gist of the pyramids are that's been found all over the world? That
there's all kinds of conspiracies about those. Yeah.
But they're power plants. So there's one of them. This one's the biggest one out of all of them, but it is 200 feet underground. It's over 150 something feet tall, and the base of it is up 200 feet below ground. And they believe that this is kind of like another thing as a powerhouse for the UFOs. And there are tons of UFO sightings that happen there.
Yeah. A black pyramid buried deep underground in Alaskan wilderness, somewhere between Nome and Mount McKinley. Exactly twice the size of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Giza. You're a geezer. Itself is the tallest known human-made structure for nearly 3,800 years. And it is guarded by the U.S. military.
That is correct.
Aha, we got some Area 51 stuff going on now.
So what's really funny about this also is I'm gonna give a plug to another channel I enjoy is the Y Files. I don't know if you've ever watched them on YouTube, but it's one of them that I really enjoy. But he is AJ is the host of that, and it's funny because we got Alaska. I'm doing this research into Alaska, and I'm looking up, I'm reading about the Black Pyramid, and then AJ's episode this past Thursday comes out. Guess what it's about? The Black Pyramid.
Black Pyramid.
Yeah. So I do tell anybody if they're listening to this right now and you're on that and you want to hear a good one, go to the Y Files and check it out. Last week's episode. It was a good one.
Yeah, they're good.
So speaking of the Alaskan Triangle, some of the other things that happen with the Alaskan Triangle also are some of the cryptids that come out of there. Some of them are known to be around that area also. So I'm going to step into the next thing that I was also going to talk about is a cryptid from there. This seems to be a running theme that we have going on Strange Embers is I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm probably going to murder trying to pronounce this. I think that is
Murder's in the next episode.
That's murders until you get until we start trying to pronounce names, and then murders in this episode.
That's true.
We need that on a shirt. Murder the name.
Murder the name. That's a good merch name there.
So as we were talking about the Alaskan Triangle, some of the things out of there are a ton of cryptids, and I want to talk about one of them in particular right now. Kushtaka. I hope I'm saying it right. I'm going with Kushtaka.
Kushtaka. As Brent throws his hands up in the air in victory.
The Kushtaka is a shape-shifting otter. Yeah. I don't know why. As soon as I saw otters, I was like, you had me at otters. It's the lure of the Kushtaka is a couple of different. They have a dark lure and they have a good lure also. One of the ones is to say that, let's say that there's one of the lures goes upon like if you're lost or injured or something, a Kushtaka might show up and lure you with sounds or with them or what, and get you to follow them to help you make it to point A to point B. The dark side of the Kushtaka is these creatures will find lost, injured, any kind of, somebody like that, and they will lead them deeper into the woods so that they can feed off of them.
Oh, so it's a good and bad spirit. Or
it's whichever side of the lure you go to.
That's odd.
It said that they can lure people in different ways, sometimes by screaming, making noises like women or children in distress to get you to come and try to investigate or to come help.
Almost sounds
ways like that.
A lot like a skinwalker, but in otter form.
But also part of the lure of the Kushtaka is to keep your furry best friend with you, because Kushtaka are afraid of dogs.
Oh, nice.
So if the Kushtaka are afraid of dogs, that's kind of interesting at the same time because they have an abundance of sled dogs in Alaska also.
Right.
So I did not look up the history of sled dogs or why, dogs got chosen to be the pullers of the sleds or anything, but it just kind of pops in my mind also is that kind of part of, did that lure have something to do with that developing?
Right.
With sled dogs up there. I mean, why did they choose dogs to pull the sleds instead of all the other things? So, yeah, I know dogs are more domesticated, but out of all the different animals, they had to do that kind of work.
That's definitely a thought behind it. But that's a good one. After that, I'm going to get into my spooky one, which is the Red Onion Saloon in Skagway, Alaska. The saloon,
The Red Onion.
the Red Onion. The saloon opened its doors in 1898, and it served two purposes. It was a brothel and a bar. It was built by Captain William Moore to provide intimate female companionship to miners during the Klondike Gold Rush.
Why don't you be a little bit more specific when you say that?
Okay. It was built by Captain William Moore to provide intimate female companionship to gold miners during the Klondike Gold Rush.
Thank you.
The saloon was an immaculate building for its time, featuring two stories. The first story was the bar, and the second floor had 10 rooms for the ladies to service the workers. They called the rooms the cribs. That's what they called the rooms, was a crib. So there was 10 cribs on the second floor. Per the saloon's request, the companions would be treated with the utmost respect and tipped very well, with a minimum tip of $1.25 per client. The brothel had
Minimum tip.
That's what they requested. That's it.
What year was this?
1898.
Carry on.
The brothel had a client system so their guests could tell which lady was available or which wasn't, so that they knew if their favorite person was available, they could stay or not. System included these dolls that they had handcrafted to imitate the actual lady, and they had them placed on a shelf, or I guess you would say it was actually on the ledge of the bar at the far end of the bar. And if the doll was sitting upright, then the lady was available. If the doll was on its back, then she was with a client. So that's kind of the idea of the whole place.
$1.50 back then is equivalent to about $56.45 today.
Oh, okay. I'm in the wrong business.
You won't look good in a dress.
You're right. I wouldn't. Business would thrive greatly in 1898 until it quickly came to a halt because the gold rush ended, which led the brothel to only remain open until 1899 to the early 1900s. After the brothel closed, the saloon became many other establishments, including a dance hall, a barracks for the army. It was a pharmacy at one point, a gift shop, a union hall. I mean, the list just continued to go on and on and on and on. But those are the ones that really struck me as interesting. In 1978, the property was purchased by Jan Westmore, who renovated the saloon and converted it back to a restaurant and bar. Now, the saloon operates as a restaurant and museum for gold mining and historical museum type deal.
So it's still open.
It is. And we'll get to when it is. It's only open a certain time of the year, though.
Understandable.
Yes. It's said that many of the ladies from the Gold Rush era, whether that be workers or the companions, have decided to make the saloon their forever home. There's one famous ghost that's always seen, and her name is Lydia. She was a former prostitute in the saloon, and it's believed that, because there's not much history on her in particular, but it's believed that she committed suicide in her room after she contracted an STD from one of the gold miners. Visitors and employees both often smell very strong perfume and hear footsteps coming from the second floor. And what's crazy about this one is she is very hostile towards male visitors. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're a male, she is aggressive. If you go to the second floor, you're going to have something happen. But she's very caring towards women. There's some cases where women were sitting in one of the rooms asleep and they felt somebody caressing their hair. and they were there by themselves, so they knew nobody was there. So yeah, that would kind of freak me out a little bit.
I think that'd probably be stranger than just like seeing something
Right.
walk down the hall. Or,
Yeah, no, you got something actually messing with you. Like, yeah. So it's also thought that she likes to water the plants throughout the day.
So do we have like a phantom watering jug just float down the hall?
I don't know. All I like, some from what one employee was saying is she was going around to water the plants, and they water them like every 3 or 4 days. When she went upstairs to water one of the plants upstairs, the dirt was still wet. Like, none of the others were wet, but the one upstairs,
Just one
upstairs was freshly watered.
Interesting.
Right. Lydia does show full apparition, but only if she's on the staircase. And you don't get to see that all the time. It's only ever so often throughout the year you get to see one full apparition of her in a very long, dark dress. There was also one time where police were called because they heard, the staff of the saloon heard a great commotion upstairs. They saw a figure, from what they were saying, they saw a figure dart from one side of the room or the hall into a room. They ran upstairs, opened the door, nobody was there. So is that Lydia that they saw there, or is it one of these other ghosts that I'm going to get into? There's another ghost there that wanders the area called Diamond Lily Davenport. She was a former madam of the saloon as well, known to softly whisper into the ears of her male guests. So I guess if you stay in her room, that's what you're going to get. It doesn't say how she died or why she's still there. That's just all I got on that one.
So you get one that whispers sweet nothings and the other one that torments you.
Correct. And then there's a third one that is a dark, malevolent spirit from what it's described as. It's a male, believed to possibly be a bouncer or a husband of one of the prostitutes. He is known to cause tons of commotion, picking things up, throwing things, moving objects back to where they go, and even has reported to get physical with the staff of the saloon. So if this is somewhere that you're wanting to go or you're interested in going, they are open from April until September. And they do have ghost tours of that, the old brothel and bar and everything else.
Awesome. Where did you say this one was at?
That is Red Onion Saloon in Skagway.
Skagway.
Before you get started, though, I do want to talk on my third one, just a brief overview because
go ahead.
Because I think it's interesting, and it does play into that gold rush era. It's called Eldred Rock Lighthouse in Lynn Canal. It's the oldest Alaskan lighthouse building. It used to be manned. It was built in 1905. Had a light that was 91 feet above sea level and had a range of 15 miles. So you know that you're not missing that.
No.
However, there's been tons and tons of shipwrecks that happen from people running into the lighthouse island. One in particular,
into the island itself.
Into the island itself. One particular one was the Clara, Nevada. It crashed. It had gold. I think they said over 100 pounds of gold or 100 something of gold. And when it crashed, it caught fire, exploded, and there was only like a very small amount of survivors. So it's thought that you can still hear their moans and screams. If you're going through that canal at night, you can still hear that. There was also one lightkeeper. They got stuck on the island during a bad storm and turned up missing. They were the second lighthouse keeper that came through, tried finding him, months on end and never could find any trace of him.
Why is there like most lighthouse houses have a story of as such what you just said? There's tons of lighthouses that have that exact story.
Right. I don't know.
But most lighthouse keepers stay by themselves.
Yeah. That's a brief overview of it. It is a very interesting story and great history. If you want to go in and read about it, it is pretty interesting. There's a long list of things. In 1973, it was actually decommissioned and now operates remotely. But the Coast Guard does,
as most of them are,
right? But the Coast Guard still goes out there to change out the light bulb, and they can't really do anything about the building itself because it's run down so bad from all the salt water and elements. And it was built out of timber that was shipped in from the United States government.
Oh, it was a timber lighthouse.
It was a timber lighthouse. Yep.
Interesting. Did you have a picture of it by chance?
I do, and I'll put it up.
On our travels, speaking of that, that's one of the things we love to do is I go to lighthouses. I've been to a bunch of lighthouses, and every time I go to them, the ones that I can go in and go to the top, I climb every one of them.
That is the lighthouse.
Beautiful.
That's it, and that's another view of it.
Nice. I am going to very quick on the historic Anchorage Hotel. I don't know if this is one of them that you ran across whenever you was reading about stuff. It's got some pretty neat history to it as well. This one was built in 1916, so we're a little over 100 years old in it. One of the very interesting things about this one was in 1964, there was a earthquake in Alaska. It was 9.2 magnitude earthquake. That is the largest earthquake recorded in U.S. history. And it managed to stay standing after the earthquake. I said U.S. history, of North American history. It's the largest earthquake that there's been. And that earthquake was also the second most powerful earthquake in the world.
Wow.
So this thing destroyed houses, buildings. It destroyed streets. The damage that it caused was remarkable. But the hotel managed to stay standing through it and stayed there. So this hotel was opened in 1916. It was owned by a gentleman by the name of Frank Reed. He had a young son that would go down to the Alaskan Railroad Terminal during the day to pick up luggage for the guests of this hotel that was arriving to it. And it's still said to this day, there are 3 ghosts that can be seen in this hotel. And one of the ghosts is of a little boy. And they think that it's his son. I didn't do a lot of research to find out if his son died at a young age or anything, but it's part of the lore of the place. Ghost number 2 that's said to be seen here, it was the first chief of police of Anchorage. He was shot with his own pistol during the Prohibition days in an alleyway beside the hotel. And they said that you can see his ghost as well. And the third ghost that's said to be seen here is a woman that'll appear in it, and she was a bride. They said she's tall and thin. You just see a tall, thin silhouette that'll appear in dark hallways and also appear in mirrors. That's the one that I think is very interesting, is the appear in mirrors aspect of it. I think that, just to me, I think that would be a lot more creepier than even seeing a shadow or anything else, is to be just glance in the mirror and there's somebody in there and then there's not. You turn around, they're not there.
Oh, for sure.
If anybody were to want to go to the historic Anchorage Hotel, the rooms that sees activities the most is room 205, 202, 215, and 217 is said to have the most activity. that's all. I didn't really just want to go, dive deep into that or anything. It was just, I wanted to just touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
There's several other hotels and all that are, they have some backstories to them. Cemeteries, just like everywhere else. And, it's an old mining town. There's a lot of old mining and during the gold rush era that happened in Alaska. So there's a lot of those mining towns that have stories to go along with it.
Well, Brent, I think that was a great episode. I really enjoyed your stories tonight, and I truly enjoyed looking up the history of Alaska.
Looking up the history of Alaska was really neat. I enjoyed that myself.
Absolutely.
Every one of these, I love hearing the history of them, going and reading about some of these places and things that goes on at them. We'll be back with you next week. You're going to have us a little murder story.
Absolutely. Mr. Sam.
And then after Mr. Sam, then we'll be taking a trip to Washington, D.C. and see what we can find there. I want to thank you for being here, especially if you made it to the end of these videos. Some of ours tend to be a little lengthy, but we just enjoy talking about this stuff. If you're here, thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for being here. And we will see you in the next episode.